Heidi ho, all you groovy guys and groovy gals. I'm glad you're here. We are going through Torah, and today we are going to finish it. We have been working on it for over 3 years, and today we're going to finish Torah. We might even finish Yasher today. We've got about 22 chapters of Yasher, a little bit less because we're going to skip a few portions of that 22 pages. But we might get through it all today. Wouldn't that be interesting? Today is Passover. We're going to leave here. We're going to have lunch after this class. Joe on my right, Carrie on my left. We are going to leave here, go to our Passover location, and slaughter our goat today. Wow, we're entering into covenant with Yahovah. Yeah. Last week, we left off on 32. We got all of 32 done. Pretty interesting chapter. This is really almost prophetic nature, what Moses says to all the tribes of Israel. And we saw last week that many of these things seem to have latter day consequences. I really liked this chapter. Listen to how it ends. He says this, no, none like Elohim of Yeshurun, who rides. I'm going to have to look at what it actually says because it's perverted. None like El of Yeshurun. In his cloud he rides heavens to aid thee. Thee. Second person singular. But he's talking about Yeshurun, his son. That is the plural, or the singular, how do I say it? The plural he. The plural he. It's his son Israel, my firstborn. He is in his majestic cloud. We talked about that plural he. It actually says clouds. But we have to understand it as the plural he. The qualitative he, just like we have the qualitative Elohim. He comes in a cloud, riding in the heavens to come to our aid. Hallelujah. And he's going to do it again. Listen what he says. To come to our aid. The eternal Elohim, thy refuge. And underneath are the everlasting arms. We're underneath his everlasting arms. He will thrust out the enemy from before thee and will say, destroy. Then Israel will dwell safely. Do you see the last day consequences, the last day ramifications of this? Him coming on the cloud. This is the great day of Yahovah. When he shows up on his cloud, you know something's going to hit the fan. And it ain't going to be pretty for those who are left. And there are not going to be very many left who dwell on the earth. But all those people, they're going to die on this day. That's why he says, destroy! He says, then, okay, after we've destroyed everything, then Israel will dwell safely. The fountain of Jacob. Remember, we said that was kind of a euphemism, is the word I'm looking for. Yeah, we're talking about a euphemism. This business about the fountain of Jacob. The fountain of Jacob alone. Israel will dwell in safety. The fountain of Jacob alone. Sounds to me like Israel is going to be the only ones populating the new world, the millennial kingdom. Is that what it sounds like to you? Because there isn't going to be anybody else left. The fountain of Jacob. It's a euphemism. It's all his seed, Jacob's seeds. Then Israel shall dwell safely, the fountain of Jacob alone, in the land of grain and new wine. His heavens, Yeshurun's heavens, shall also drop dew. He says, happy are thee, O Israel. Yeshurun, my son, my firstborn, the Ezra men, and all those who dwell with them. Who is like thee? A people saved by Yahovah. Think about these people as you would think about Noah. Noah, a man saved by Yahovah who populated the world as we know it right now. We're all men, seeds of Noah, aren't we? Well, in the same way, the next world is all going to be populated by who? The seeds of Yahovah's spiritual men, Yeshurun, Israel. Happy are thee, O Israel. Who is like thee, a people saved by Yahovah? Who's Yahovah? A shield of thy help and a sword of thy majesty. Thy enemies shall submit to thee, and thou shalt tread down their high places. We're going to take the whole world for ourselves. Anyone who will not submit to us, join us, become our servants. We're talking about the great men who are being raised up even today. This very day at Passover is when the Ger becomes the Ezra man, the heir of righteousness, the seed of a spiritual kingdom. Those men, anyone that will not submit to those men is going to perish from the earth. Well, these are the last words of Moses. This is it. This is it. Didn't say anything else after this. Well, now Moses is going to die. Let's go to chapter 34. It's a short chapter, only like 12 verses, as I recall. 10, 11, 12. 12 verses. Let's go through them real quick. I want to get off to Yasher. Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho. Moab, look at what he's saying. He went from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho. Let's take a look on this on the map. Here we are. Here's the plains of Moab. We're in here. This is the plains of Moab. Abel Shittim is kind of our base. So here is Mount Nebo here. It says he went to Mount Nebo to the top of Pisgah. Well, looks like two different mountains. How can you go to the top of to Mount Nebo to the top of Pisgah? It doesn't make sense, does it? Yeah, I don't know what to do with that. We got two different mountains. Always trying to make sense of the scriptures. Don't just read it to read it. Why read it if you're not going to read it with understanding? It's a waste of time, isn't it? We got to work to understand it. And maps help us to understand it. I could see maybe having this be Mount Nebo and then to Mount Pisgah. Maybe he went on his way from one to the other, but this looks like he's going from the plains of Moab out of his way to go to Mount Nebo to go back to Pisgah. Well, that doesn't make much sense, does it? Well, maybe we're going to see some additional light in Yasher. I don't think we will, but let's watch for that. Let's keep that question in our heart, because these are questions that we don't have answers for right now. So now Yahovah is going to tell him what he's going to be able to see. Well, maybe it's just the narrator that's going to be able to tell us that. It says, then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho. And Yahovah showed him the land of Gilead as far as Dan. Okay, let's understand what the land of Gilead is. And I'll show you where Dan is. Dan is our northernmost city. Here we are. I'm going to change this to 50%. So here he is, Pisgah, where I got my hand. Yahovah is showing him Gilead. This is Gilead. All of this stuff on the east side of the Jordan River. It's the stuff that we took from Og of Bashan and Sihon, king of the Amorites. This is all Gilead. Gilead, Gilead, Gilead. See the names? I even use it. Here is Dan, way, way, way up here. No, he's even further than that. He's right where my hand is. You can't hardly tell because there's two names on top of it, but that's where he is, way up there. So he's able to see from Mount Pisgah. Apparently, Moses can see this far. He can see out to the sea, and it says that he can see as far south as Zor. Here's Zor right here. Zor. He's up here, Pisgah. Must be quite a vantage point, wouldn't you say? Yeah. Interesting, that's one of the places where, what was his name? The king of Moab, Balak, I believe his name was. Yeah. Balak asked Balaam to curse Israel and brought him up to this mountain. It was one of the places that they came to. Maybe he picked this mountain because it had such a vast view of Israel, this country, then the land of the Canaanites. But it would have been his land as well. I want that land back, he says. Curse Israel. Going back to the scriptures. So I kind of showed you Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim. That is just below the land of Ephraim, Manasseh, Naphtali. That's all northern kingdoms, northern tribes. As far as the land of Judah, so there's the land directly to the west of where he's looking right now. As far as the western sea, so he can not only see the Judah, but he can see all the way to the sea. Wow. And then he says the south and the plains of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as far as Zor. I'm not sure what the city of palm trees is. I guess I should have looked that up for you. I didn't even think to do that. But Zor, we just showed you where Zor was. That was on the south end of the Dead Sea, which used to be a very plush place, but now it's, of course, desert after the brimstone fell on it and all the 5 cities there. Then Yahovah said to him, actually, I don't think it fell on Zor. I think Zor was spared because that's one of the places that Lot ran to. Then Yahovah said to him, this is the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to thy descendants. I have caused thee to see it with thy eyes, but thou shalt not cross over there. Remember, we talked last week about why didn't Yahovah allow Moses to cross over into the land of Canaan? I think he was trying to reestablish a shadow picture that Moses failed on when he hit that rock instead of speaking to that rock like he was supposed to. And we talked about the ramifications of that last week. If you haven't heard that, you need to listen to that. It's very important for you to understand. Israel's men in these last days are going to have a rod of their mouth. Not a rod, but a rod of their mouth. With their lips, it says in Isaiah 11, they shall slay their enemies. And by Moses hitting it with his rod, he gave the wrong picture. And I think it was for that very reason that he didn't get to go into the land. Yehovah needed to reestablish that picture so that we could see it. So let's continue. Verse 5. So Moses, the servant of Yehovah, died there. That's it. Moses, the servant of Yehovah. Let's find out if it says the servant. I'll bet it says Moses, a servant of Yehovah. Those definite articles, they'll get you every time. Look at last week. This is how chapter 33 started out. Now this is the blessing which Moses, it says, a man of the Elohim. A man of the Elohim. Which is more important, a man of the Elohim or the man of God? You see how they twist it? They make it more about the man than they make it about the Elohim. But Moses is a man of the Elohim. I am a man of the Elohim, and all of the 144,000 will be a man of the Elohim. Do you see the difference between Moses, the man of God? Oh man, it's subtle. It's subtle. But it's terribly, terribly important that we see this. Do you guys see that? Do you see the importance of that? Yeah, I mean, we're talking, this is life and death. We've got to get this stuff. We have to understand who we serve. And it's not about the man of God. It's about a man of the God. It's about who we serve. Not about the man, it's about the God. Who's the lawmaker and who's the judge? So here's kind of the same deal. Where were we? We were, here we are, 34. I guess I really hadn't changed it. Let's go back to 34. We read right here, we're talking about Moses, the servant of Yehovah. Okay, is that definite article there? It would have to say ha'aved. Ha'aved is what we're looking for. Is it going to say ha'aved or is it going to say aved? If it says aved, it's a servant. Okay, so here it is, aved. Okay, that's it. See those three letters? See, can you see above, right below where it says H5650? It has those three Hebrew letters. That says aved. An, bet, dalet. And here it is where my cursor is. Same three letters. So there is no definite article. So they added the definite article. This says a man or a servant, Moses, a servant of Yehovah. A servant. Not the servant. Okay, so you see how we're doing the same thing again? We're making it all about Moses, but we can be that Moses. We can be a servant of Yehovah. Not the servant. We can't be the servant because we're not Moses, but we can be a servant. You see? Don't limit our understandings by throwing these definite articles at us. They confuse us. They limit our understandings. I hope you can see that. Yeah, I just knew reading that. I just knew that can't be a definite article. It's just not there. I was right. So let's call attention to it. So Moses, a servant of Yehovah, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of Yehovah. You know what? Even Moses dies according to the word of Yehovah. Do you think he's going to spare anybody else? He's going to change his word? I'm going to change my mind for you. You have such a good heart. I just love you so much. Folks, don't bet on it. Even Moses died and didn't get to go in because he disobeyed. It says he was buried, and he buried him. He, who's he? It makes it sound like Yehovah buried him. Buried him. Remember, he went up there with, as I recall, didn't he go up there with, maybe he didn't. Maybe I'm confusing it with Aaron. When he went up with the Aaron, remember he went up with Eleazar. It was Moses and Eleazar and Aaron. And Aaron died, and I'm sure they would have buried Aaron up there. So, did Moses go alone? Maybe Moses did go alone. Maybe Yehovah did dispose of the body somehow. Who knows? But they didn't find him. That's the point we're making here. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab. He, again, who's he? Yehovah buried him. Somebody buried him. I would think Joshua would have gone up there with him. And he buried him in the valley of the land of Moab. Let's watch for that when we will read Yasher. Opposite Beth Peor. Beth Peor, the house of Peor. Let's find out where that is. Here it is, right here. Baal Peor. Beth Baal Peor. Beth Baal Peor. Here, let me just zoom in on it for you so you can see it a little bit better. 150. Here it is. Bet Baal Peor. So here's Mount Pisgah, and here is, it said, in the valley opposite Bet El Peor. So right in this area is where he would have been buried. Bet Baal Peor. This is the house of Lord Peor. He was one of the Elohim of the land. He had a house, servants. We want to make him an idol so many times. It makes me mad. Okay, no one knows his grave to this day. And Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim and his natural vigor diminished. His eyes weren't dim. His natural vigor wasn't diminished, it says. But now, look what it said here in, I believe it was 32. Actually, do I have it on here? 31. Here it is right here. Then Moses went and spoke these words to all Israel, the Ezra men. And he said to them, I am 120 years old today. I can no longer go out and come in. Does that sound like he has no dimness of eyes and all his vigor? No. It sounds like the opposite of it, doesn't it? Okay, it doesn't have anything to do with the eyes, but if you can't go out and come in, to me, that says maybe you don't have as much vigor as you used to have. So again, this is just one more thing in Deuteronomy that we just have to question contradictions. He says, also, Yehovah said to me, you shall not cross over this Jordan. So then here's something that we had last week. Talking about this day, okay? What day is this? 120 years old. Moses was 120 years old when he died. Well, if you're 120 years old, you can be 120 years old for 365 days, right? Ish. Okay, but I think it's the same day. Because look what it says. Then Jehovah spoke to Moses that very same day. This is the same day that we've been talking about all of Deuteronomy. Today, he says, today. That very same day. Saying, go up to the mountain of Abarim. Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab across from Jericho. See, now he's dying on the Mount Nebo. So did he die on Mount Nebo or did he die on Mount Pisgah? Again, another contradiction. View the land of Canaan, which I give to Israel's seed as a possession, and die on the mountain, which you ascend and be gathered to your people, just as Aaron, your brother, died on Mount Hor and was gathered to his people. Someone asked me the other day, what does it mean to be gathered to his people? He's going into the dirt, going to where all his people have gone. To be raised, remember, we're probably looking at the righteous dead being raised at some time in the future. I would think at the end of the millennial kingdom. Until then, all the righteous dead of the earth are going to the grave. That's where all his people are right now. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Noah, Shem, Eber, his people, the spiritually born men of the earth. And Israel's seed wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. So the days of weeping and mourning for Moses ended. Now Joshua, the son of Nun, was full of the spirit of wisdom. Full of the spirit of wisdom. Joshua, the Ruach of wisdom. See, we got this whole business, Ruach. We see this word and we start thinking Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, don't we? Okay, Ruach, that's not what we're talking about. It's the spirit. It's, I have a spirit. Gary has a spirit. Joe has a spirit. But our spirits aren't the same as Jehovah's spirits. Jehovah is described in Genesis 1 as spirit, Elohim. He's spirit. You can't see spirit. That's why he has to come in a cloud. That's why he always appears in a cloud to his people. Pillars of fire and smoke. Well, here's the spirit of wisdom, full of Ruach wisdom. Or perhaps full of wisdom Ruach. Ooh, I want wisdom Ruach. Let me show you something. This is Isaiah 11. I came across this last night. Well, I thought about it last night. I knew exactly where it was, of course. We've only talked about it a billion times. Isaiah 11, talking about the 144,000. This is where we were just talking about slaying them with, right here. Verse 4. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. He, the plural, he, Israel, the seed of David. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. The breath of his lips he shall slay the wicked. Well, look what it says in verse 2. Here is 7 spirits, 7 ruachs. Ruach, the Ruach Yahovah. The Ruach Yahovah shall rest on him. These are what's going to happen to the 144,000, the servants of Yahovah. All servants. I'm trying to get away from the. All servants of Yahovah in the last days. Spirit, Yahovah, shall rest upon him. Spirit, wisdom. Spirit, understanding. Spirit, counsel. Spirit, might. Spirit, knowledge, and the fear of Yahovah. Do you notice anything about the order of these spirits? I noticed it last night for the first time, never noticed it before. Because we're talking about the spirit wisdom coming on Joshua. Spirit wisdom. Didn't seem like all the other things were coming on him. And we're going to see that in the very next verse. But let me just show this to you. Look at when we talk about knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. Remember, I wrote articles, 4 articles I wrote on knowledge, understanding, and wisdom. You can't have understanding without having knowledge. Knowledge is the first thing that we're going to get. So once we get knowledge, then we begin to build our understandings. Once we've got good understandings, we can build even better understandings. So one understanding leads to new understandings when we get it right. You know, if you make it all about the children of Israel, you're screwed. You've just screwed up all of your understandings, and you're never going to go on beyond that because you don't know that we're talking about spiritually born men, Israel's seed. Once you understand Israel's seed as a spiritually born men, the Ezra, now we got something to build on. So that's knowledge and understanding. Get good knowledge, good understandings. It leads to better understandings and ultimately wisdom. Because with understandings, we gain wisdom. Wisdom is understanding you can't see. You can't see it, understanding it. Knowledge, you can't see it. But wisdom, you can see. You can hear. I hope that you hear wisdom come from my lips as we speak every week. Because wisdom comes from our mouth. A man of wisdom who has spirit wisdom, it can come from our mouth and it can come from our actions. The things that we do demonstrate spirit wisdom. But look at the foundation of it all. Because we've got wisdom, here's understanding, here's knowledge, and what's the very first one? The fear of Yahovah. Now, when the 144,000 are raised up, those servants, okay, we don't know for sure 144,000, but all the servants are going to be raised up. The prophet, like Moses, is coming. What is the first message that they're going to give to the world? Fear Yahovah and give glory to him. For the hour of his judgment has come. Worship him. Fear Yahovah. Okay, that's the beginning of wisdom. The fear of Elohim is the beginning of wisdom. It's right there. Do you see it? You get the fear of Elohim. The end is wisdom. But you got to get some things in the middle, don't you? There's even counsel and might involved in it. Ooh, this is so interesting. But he gave wisdom to Joshua. Let's go back to that verse. I don't think it's 7. Let's see where we were at here. Full of the spirit of wisdom. Verse 9. Now Joshua, the son of Nun, was full of spirit wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him. So Israel's seed heeded him and did as Jehovah had commanded Moses. They heeded Joshua and did as Jehovah commanded Moses. Now listen to this. This is very interesting. Here's Joshua who got the spirit of wisdom. But now look what it says. But since then, talking about the day Moses died, since then has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom Jehovah knew face to face. Apparently Joshua didn't have it. Since then, there has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses. So there's some prophet coming that is going to have more. I'm here to tell you that is the plural he prophet. The 144,000 are going to be the prophet like Moses. The plural he. And there's going to be a whole bunch of them that will speak and know Yahovah face to face. It's all rooted, you guys, in this day, today. Passover. Don't get Passover right, you will not be one of those prophets. Do you want to know Yahovah face to face? This is the day that it's all about. You gotta get it. You gotta understand it. How can I be more plain? These men are still coming. You know, we want to make it all about Yeshua. Folks, you have learned lies. Yeshua was nothing like Moses. Who did Yeshua deliver from the wicked, the evil governments of this world? Himself. Nobody! Yeah, Carrie says himself. Yeah, he maybe delivered himself. He maybe helped some other guys to see and understand that. But he didn't deliver, not like Moses did. But there is someone coming like Moses who's going to do what Moses did. Bring Israel's seed out of Egypt. And that's what the 144,000, that's what the servants of Elohim are going to do in the last day. The branch, the banners, the seed of Jesse. Remember, we're talking about spiritual seed. Don't think flesh seed, think spiritual seed. You know, everybody says, I'm a son of Abraham. No, you're not a son of Abraham. You're not a son of Abraham until you've been born a spiritual birth. Because Abram was the man of the flesh, and Abraham was the man of the spirit. You're not a son of Abraham. And of course, no ladies are sons of Abraham. Don't even go there. It's another false image. Not knowing the role of a man versus the role of a woman. Abraham was a spiritually born man. Well, let's continue. It says, but since then there has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom Yahovah knew face to face, in all the signs and wonders which Yahovah sent him to do in the land of Egypt before Pharaoh, before all his servants and all his land, his servants, Pharaoh's servants, and Pharaoh's land, and by all the mighty power and all the great terror which Moses performed in the sight of Israel. Have we had anybody else like that since? No, sir, we have not. But we're going to when Jehovah raises up those called out men, his male child in these last days. We're going to see it. Will this today, tonight, I guess that would be tomorrow, will that be the day that a nation is born in a day? Could be. I doubt it, but it could be. I think there's things that have to happen before then. But right now, Yahovah is again raising up his spiritually born men. Every year, the number of men who are keeping a real Passover is growing year by year by year. It's really growing exponentially because we've got, for me, okay, I keep it because I keep it, Carrie keeps it. Now Joe keeps it. I talked to people the other day. He says he's been keeping it for 8 years. He says he learned it from me. How many people has he told in that amount of time? How many people have I told in that amount of time? It grows exponentially because I get one person to start keeping it, and then he starts talking to other people, and they start keeping it. Won't be long before Yahovah has the number that he needs to have the nation born in a day. That nation is going to be born in a day on Passover because that's the time of life. It's when the nation is born. That's when Isaac was born on the time of life in Genesis 17. Ooh, I can't wait to teach that again when we go back to Genesis. It's going to be so fun going back to Genesis. So this was the last verse. And all the mighty power and all the great terror which Moses performed in the sight of all Israel. Talking about the prophet like Moses. Well, we're going to see these latter day prophets like Moses do these great things. Remember, we're going to slay them with the rod of our mouth. Destroy the wicked with our lips. Man, talk about great terror. Oh, there's guys in the army. They're all buff. What was the movie we watched last night, Joe? American Sniper. We were looking at these guys training for the SEALs and all. They're buff. Oh, I'm a destroyer of my enemies, and they're strong America and all this stuff. We're gonna slay them with our mouth. With our mouth, the rod of our lips. No buff. These little skinny guys. These old codgers. Yahovah is going to raise up and do a mighty work. I want to now go to Yasher. And here is Yasher 8. We're almost done. There's 87. There's 88. Look at, we skipped. We haven't read Yasher since Numbers 33. Isn't that amazing? We had to read all the rest of Numbers and all of Deuteronomy before we came back to Yasher. And we had Moses die, which was the end of Deuteronomy, last time we read. Look right here. Moses finished commanding Israel's seed, and Jehovah said to him, "Go up to Mount Avarim." Well, now he's going to Mount Avarim. Now, I understand Avarim as kind of the Avarims. They're all the mountains, kind of like a range that I understand this as, that runs from the length of the Dead Sea and beyond into Edom. Those mountains go into that part, but that's the kind of a range of Avarim. So this is not really telling us which mountain. I would really call this Avarim as a mountain range. Go up to Mount Avarim and die there. Be gathered to thy people as Aaron thy brother was gathered. So here we had him dying on Mount Avarim. In 33 or 32, we had him dying in Mount Nebo. And now in 34, he's dying in Mount Pisgah. How do we resolve all this? You see, we got the problems. Avarim, as I say, I really think that's a mountain range. And we talked about Avarim, the runes of Avarim, or the runes on Avarim, in Numbers 21, when we were just crossing into the land of Moab at the bottom of the Dead Sea. You'd have to go back and listen to that video or audio to hear that. He says, and be gathered to thy people as Aaron thy brother was gathered. And Moses went up as Jehovah commanded him, and he died there in the land of Moab by the order of Jehovah in the 40th year from Israel's going forth from the land of Egypt. Remember, he was 80 years old when he brought him out. Now 40 years later, he's 120. So it all agrees. And Israel's seed wept for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days. And the days of weeping and mourning for Moses were completed. So there was nothing in here about Moses' instructions in Deuteronomy. Okay, I think that's significant. I do think that's significant. But now we're going to go down to 88. Listen to what it says. And it was after the death of Moses that Yahweh said to Joshua, the son of Nun, saying, Rise up and pass the Jordan to the land which I have given to Israel's seed. He's talking to Joshua. And thou shalt make Israel's seed inherit the land. Do the Ger inherit the land? Do the ladies inherit the land? Do the children inherit the land? Do the servants inherit the land? No, 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 no. Israel's seed inherits the land, the Ezra men. Okay? Throw out that children of Israel. It's going to get you messed up. Every place which the sole of thy feet. Whose feet are we talking about? The children's feet, the ladies' feet, the servants' feet? No, Israel's seed's feet. Not the feet of the Gentiles. I see people talking about it all the time. You know, we got a picture on your Facebook page. All the feet, all the places where I put my feet are going to be mine. Folks, you couldn't be more farther from the truth. You don't know enough. Every place which the sole of your feet shall tread shall belong to thee. From the wilderness of Lebanon unto the great river, the river Pareth, shall be your boundary. Pareth, I think we're talking about the river of Egypt. River of Egypt, the river Pareth. And of course, Lebanon is way up north. So he's saying, this land's going to be our land. It's supposed to be. We didn't get it all. We settled in too soon. No man shall stand up against thee all the days of thy life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with thee. Talking to Joshua. Only be strong and of good courage to observe the law of Moses, law which Moses commanded thee. Do not turn from the way either to the right or to the left, in order that thou may prosper in all that thou dost. So he says, be strong and of good courage. Is he talking about being strong in the body? Or is he talking about being strong in the mind and in the heart? He tells us how to be strong. What does he say? Observe all the law of Moses, that which Moses commanded thee. That's how you be strong. And Joshua commanded the officers of Israel, saying, pass through the camp. Officers. Are we talking about ladies? Or are we talking about men? Men, right. Passing through the camp and commanded the people. Who are the people? The Ezra men, saying, prepare for yourselves provisions. For in 3 days more you shall pass the Jordan to possess the land. You know what? We have had our new year. We are between the first day of Aviv and the 10th day of Aviv. I would guess that we are probably, it says 3 days, that we are probably around the 5th or the 6th day of Aviv at this point. We don't know that for sure, but we're going to see that we're going to circumcise ourselves on the 10th day. And the officers of Israel's seed did so, and they commanded the people, and they did all that Joshua had commanded. All the people did what Joshua commanded. Do the ladies do what Joshua commanded? No, the ladies do what their husbands, what their man commands. Okay, again, we got to get the picture right. And Joshua sent 2 men to spy out the land of Jericho. And the men went and spied out Jericho. And at the end of 7 days, they came to Joshua in the camp and said to him, Yahovah has delivered the whole land into our hand, and the inhabitants thereof are melted with fear because of us. Ooh, won't it be interesting when Yahovah raises up his host, Israel, and the earth, and all the inhabitants of the land are going to melt with fear because of us. You can't kill those guys. We're in big trouble. And it came to pass after that Joshua rose up in the morning, and all Israel with him. And they journeyed from Shittim. Remember, we were talking about Abel, Shittim. And Joshua and all Israel with him passed the Jordan. And Joshua was 82 years old when he passed the Jordan with Israel. And the people went up from Jordan on the 10th day of the first month. And they encamped at Gilgal at the eastern corner of Jericho. Okay, let's look at where this is right now. Where are they crossing? We're talking about Shittim. We're talking about Gilgal. We're talking about the eastern corner of Jericho. Let's look at our map. I want you to just, it always helps me see it in my mind better if I can look at a map. Better pull up the map, not this. Here's the map. So here we are, Abel Shittim. Right here is where we were encamped. We crossed over somewhere between here and here. Here's Jericho. And here's Gilgal. Eastern side of Jericho. Here's Jericho right here, this little dot. And up here, eastern corner, that'd be eastern corner, would be Gilgal. This is where we're going to have our circumcisions, and this is where we're going to slaughter our goats right now. And the people went up from the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and they encamped at Gilgal on the eastern corner of Jericho. And Israel's seed kept the Passover in Gilgal, in the plains of Jericho, on the 14th day of the month, as it is written in the law of Moses, the instructions of Moses, the Torah of Moses. And the manna ceased at that time on the morrow of the Passover, the day after we kept the Passover. No more manna. We're now in the land. We're going to eat from the land of milk and honey. And there was no more manna for Israel's seed. And they ate the produce of the land of Canaan. It says Jericho was entirely closed against Israel's seed. No one came out or went in. Why? They were afraid. They saw what we did to Moab, to Sihon, king of the Amorites, to Og, king of Bashan. Remember, they were giants. Huge. And it was in the second month, on the first day of the month, that Yahovah said to Joshua, rise up. Behold, I have given Jericho into thy hand with all the people thereof, and all your fighting men. Who's going up? That's right. The fighting men. Fighting men. Okay, we've got the Ezra, but they're also going to have the Ger. Ezra's Ger, and Ezra's servants are going to be with him, but they're commanding Ezra. And all your fighting men shall go round the city each day. Thus you shall do for 6 days. Folks, look what's happening here. Oh, well, look at this. Oh, this is really interesting. Oh, wow. It was the second month, on the first day of the month, that Yahovah said to Moses, or said to Joshua, rise up. I've never seen that before. Second month. Well, no, it's not the second Passover. I would have thought it was the second Passover because remember, we're talking about the first day of the month. Now, we're going to have to watch for this because now that we've seen this, we got to look at Torah more closely. I have always assumed, I would say more than assumed, I believe I saw that we kept the Passover, and then it was for the next 7 days that we went around that city. And it was the seventh day that we blew the trumpet and screamed, yelled. We had a taru, a ruah tarua, a great shout. And that's when the walls came down. But here, I'm surprised I've never seen this before. I've obviously seen it. I underlined it. It was in the second month on the first day of the month. Second month. Passover's been over for 2 weeks. That Jehovah said to Joshua, rise up. Behold, I have given Jericho into thy hand with all the people thereof. And all your fighting men shall go around the city once each day. Thus you shall do for 6 days. And the priests shall blow upon trumpets. Which trumpets do the priests blow? Shofars or the brass trumpets? The brass ones, that's right. They're going to blow the brass trumpets. And when you shall hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall give a great shouting. There it is, a ruah tarua, a great shouting, that the walls of Jericho shall fall down, and the people shall go up. The people shall go up. Which people? Here we are. Every man against his opponent. Remember, there's no ladies on this side of the Jordan right now. They got left. Remember, we were crossing over to possess the land. We're going to war. We didn't bring our families with us. But now I say that, and I can show you that many times. But we're going to see later on that when we talk about Achan, it appears that his family was killed with him. Well, that doesn't make any sense. What would his wife be doing there? She would have to be back on the other side. The reason we're going through this right now, Passover and the beginning of our attack on Canaan, is because it's a shadow picture that I want you to see for these last days. A Passover, and then after that, an attack on the world. We're going to take the whole world for ourselves because the earth is Jehovah's and all those who dwell in it. Oh my, it's going to be amazing. What did it say? No longer will they say, great is Jehovah who brought Israel's seed out of the land of Egypt, but great is Jehovah who brought Israel's seed out of all the places where he has scattered them. Woohoo! It's going to be good! And Joshua did so according to all Jehovah had commanded him. And on the 7th day, they went round the city 7 times, and the priests blew the trumpets. And at the 7th round, Joshua said to the people, shout, for Jehovah has delivered the city into our hands. Only the city and all it contains shall be accursed to Jehovah. And keep yourselves from the accursed things, lest you make a camp of Israel accursed and trouble it. Listen what he says. All the silver and gold and brass and iron shall be consecrated to Jehovah. They shall come into the treasury of Jehovah. This is our very first battle. It's going to come into the treasury of Jehovah. People weren't allowed to take it. And the people blew upon the trumpets. Well, here they're saying the people blew upon the trumpets and made a great shout. So now did the people have their shofars? Remember, the people can't blow the trumpets. They can't blow the brass trumpets. Only the priests can blow the brass trumpets. So did these men have their shofars? Maybe they did. It says they made a great shout. Ruah, I think it's Ruah to Ruah. And the walls of Jericho fell down, and all the people went up, every man, straight before him. And they took the city and utterly destroyed all that was in it, both man and woman, young, old, ox, sheep, ass, with the edge of the sword. Everybody's going to die. Remember, when we come into a land that we're going to take possession of, everyone dies. We will keep the sheep and the goats alive. In this case, we didn't, because this was the first city. But we didn't take any booty from this city either, did we? We brought it to the temple, to the tabernacle. But we killed men, women, young, old, ox, sheep, ass. It's probably ox, flocks, ass, because we have cattle. Sheep and goats would be the zeon, and then the ass would be the unclean animal, with the edge of the sword. And they burned the whole city with fire. Only the vessels of silver and gold and brass and iron they put into the treasury of Jehovah. And Joshua swore at that time, saying, "Cursed be the man who builds Jericho." Oh, this is so interesting. Look what it says. This is Joshua. Did Jehovah tell him to say this? No, it doesn't look like it to me. Joshua took it on himself. Joshua swore at that time, saying, "Cursed be the man who builds Jericho. He shall lay the foundation thereof in his firstborn, and his youngest son and in his youngest son shall he set up the gates thereof." Well, you know what? This is Joshua that said this, but this is Jehovah who fulfilled this prophecy, this order, this command. Jehovah fulfilled it. You'll see it next week, probably. And Achan, the son of Carmi, the son of Zabdi, the son of Zerah, son of Judah, dealt treacherously in the accursed things, and he took of the accursed thing and hid it in his tent. And the anger of Jehovah was kindled against Israel. And it was after this, when Israel's seed had returned from burning Jericho, Joshua sent men to spy out also Ai, and to fight against it. And the men went up and spied out Ai. And they returned and said, "Let not all the people go with thee to Ai. Only let 3,000 men go and smite the city, for the men thereof are but few." This is going to be a turkey shoot, is what they're saying. We can handle this. We don't need all these men. Just give us 3,000 men. And Joshua did so. And there went up with him of Israel's seed about 3,000 men. And they fought against the men of Ai. And the battle was severe against Israel, and the men of Ai smote 36 men of Israel. Oh my goodness, what's going on? And Israel's seed fled from before the men of Ai. Oh, we're going to look bad now. And when Joshua saw this thing, he tore his garments, fell on his face to the ground before Jehovah, he and the elders of Israel, and they put dust on their heads. And Joshua said, "Oh, Jehovah, didst thou bring this people over the Jordan? What shall I say after the Israelites have turned their backs against their enemies? This looks bad." Now therefore all the Canaanites, inhabitants of the land, shall hear this thing and surround us and cut off our name. Why does it say cut off our name? Because if you kill these men, you wipe out the generations that would come from them. And Jehovah said to Joshua, why dost thou fall on thy face? Rise, get thee off out of the ground. Get thee up. For the Israelites have sinned and taken of the accursed things. I will no more be with them unless they destroy the accursed things from among them. And Joshua rose up, assembled the people. Which people did he assemble? The Ezra, and brought the Urim. Remember, the Urim is what the high priest has by the order of Jehovah. And the tribe of Judah was taken. And Achan, the son of Carmi, was taken. Now, in Torah, it says they did it by lot. So apparently, the Urim and the Thummim works on kind of a lot basis. I'm not sure how it is that they picked this one or how it even goes. Maybe we said, okay, let's take the tribe of Judah and the tribe of Issachar. And if it's Issachar, it's going to be the white stone. And if it's Judah, it's going to be the black stone. And so they got Judah, the black stone. And then when they picked Judah and the next one, again, they picked the black stone. And the black one. So it came down to Judah. So now we got Judah. Now we're going to get which family of Judah? Because there's so many families in Judah. But so he got the tribe of Judah, and then Achan, the son of Carmi, was taken. So, I don't know how many generations they had to go down, but they had to get to one particular man, and Torah says they did it by lot. The Urim and the Thummim may have been used that way. They had the deal on his chest that had all the tribes. Remember, they had it was the ephod. They had gemstones that represented each of the tribes. Perhaps maybe a gemstone lighted up. I don't know how Jehovah does it, but there is something going on here that allowed the high priest. Remember, he's the representative of Jehovah, HaMashiach. Of course, all the priests are HaMashiach, but he is the high priest. He's probably the one that has the closest relationship with Jehovah of the priests. Well, he has to be. He's the one that gets to go in and put the blood on the Ark of the Covenant at Yom Kippurim. So they picked out this man. Now look what it says. And Joshua said to Achan, tell me, my son, what hast thou done? And Achan said, I saw amongst the spoil goodly garments of Shinar, and 200 shekels of silver, and a wedge of gold of 50 shekel weight. And I coveted them, and I took them. I got a note here. Achan was taken by lust of his lower nature. Yeah, he lusted after them. And behold, they are hid in the earth in the midst of my tent. He had them buried under his tent. When I saw the spoils of the beautiful Babylonian garments, 200 shekels of silver and a wedge of gold weighing 50 shekels, I coveted them and took them, and there they are, hidden in the earth in the midst of my tent, and the silver under it. And Joshua sent men who went and took them from the tent of Achan. And he brought them to Joshua. And Joshua took Achan and these utensils, and his sons and daughters, and all belonging to him. Look at his sons and his daughters. Where did the daughters come from all of a sudden? What are the daughters doing here? I don't get it. I read this, I thought, sons and daughters? Well, his wife, where's his wife? Okay, they never talk about the wife. If he's gonna kill him, he's gonna kill his wife also. But they're not here. How does that work? It clearly stated that the women and the children were going to stay back in the east side of the river. I know we read it many times. Only the men are going across. So where do the daughters come from? Okay, you see there's a problem here, isn't there? All belonging to him, and they brought them into the valley of Achor. Did they go and send for his daughters? Maybe that's what they did. They weren't that far. No, look at where we're at. They could have done that. They could easily have done that. Let's just consider that for a thought. I want to show you where I is. As I recall, yeah, it's close. Here is I right here. Of course, they got a question mark on it, but that's about where I would be at. They went to Jericho. It will be the next major city that they're coming to. So, could they have backtracked? Look at that. That's 15 miles. About 15 miles. That they would have to backtrack to get to Shittim, to get to where the ladies were. Mm-hmm. Hey, come with us. Want to show you something. How come they get to go? All the ladies are saying. Never mind. It could be. That could be exactly what happened. They had to make an example of this man, and by going after his wife, his women, and his daughters, and his sons, this is how you make the example. Could very well be. I hadn't thought about that before, but that's certainly a possibility. Brought them to the valley of Achor, and Joshua burned them with fire. And all the Israelites stoned Achan with stones, and they raised over him a heap of stones. Therefore did he call the place the valley of Achor. So Jehovah's anger was appeased, and Joshua afterwards came to the city of Ai and fought against it. Look at what they did here, you guys. Did you see that? And Joshua took Achan and these utensils, his sons and his daughters, belonging to him, and they brought them to the valley of Achor. And Joshua burned them with fire. Who did he burn? The utensils? Everything. It sounds like he burned these utensils, these sons and daughters and women. Remember, the women are included with the men, and all belonging to him, and brought them to the valley of Achor. And Joshua burned them with fire. Burned them, not Achor, or not Achan. Joshua burned them with fire, and all the Israelites stoned Achan with stones. Well, isn't that interesting? I would have thought they all would get stoned and then perhaps burned with fire. But it sounds to me, just what I'm reading here, that Achan saw his family burned with fire. Mm-hmm. Could that be terrible? Mm-hmm. See your sons, your daughters, your women burned with fire? And then get stoned? Mm-hmm. Setting an example to all Israel, isn't he? Mm-hmm. Wow. That'd make an impression on me. Talk about the fear of Yahovah. If you didn't have it already, you had it then, didn't you? So Yahweh's anger was appeased, and Joshua afterwards came to the city and fought against it. And Yahweh said to Joshua, fear not, neither be dismayed. Behold, I have given into thy hand, her king, her people, and thou shalt do unto them as thou did to Jericho and her king. Only the spoil thereof, the cattle thereof, shall you take for a prey for yourselves. Lay an ambush for the city behind it. So we, in this city now, got to keep the cattle, got to keep the booty, the gold, the silver. It got to be ours. So Joshua did according to the word of Yahovah. And he chose from amongst the sons of war, 30,000. We sent 3,000 the first time. We're not taking any chances this time, sending 30,000 valiant men. And he sent them and lay in ambush in the city. And he commanded them, saying, when you see us, we will flee before them with cunning. See what they're doing? They're making them look like, oh, let's run away from them again. We're still afraid. And they will pursue us. You shall then rise out of ambush and take the city. And they did so. And Joshua fought, and the men of the city went out towards Israel, not knowing that they were laying in ambush for them behind the city. And Joshua and all the Israelites feigned themselves wearied, faked being tired before them, and they fled by the way of the wilderness with cunning. And the men of Ai gathered all the people who were in the city to pursue the Israelites. The people, which people are they drawing? The men people, primarily. They do fight with ladies now and then, just like Israel does right now, that fake Israel. And the men of Ai gathered all the people who were in the city to pursue the Israelites. And they went out and were drawn away from the city. Not one remained, and they left the city open and pursued the Israelites. So it says not one remained. Not one what?
Warrior.
Not one man remained. Right, warriors. And these were lying in ambush, rose out of their places and hastened to come to the city and took it and set it on fire. And the men of Ai turned back. There it is. The men of Ai turned back. And behold, the smoke of the city ascended from to the skies, and they had no means of retreating either one way or the other. And all the men of Ai were in the midst of Israel, some on this side, some on that side, and they smote them so that not one of them remained. And Israel's seed took Melash, king of Ai, alive. And they brought him to Joshua, and Joshua hanged him on a tree, and he died. And Israel's seed returned to the city after having burned it, and they smote all those that were in it with the edge of the sword. So who is in the city?
Women and children.
The women and children and the elderly. That's exactly right. And the number of those that had fallen of the men of Ai, both man and woman, was 12,000. Only the cattle and the spoil of this city they took for themselves according to the word of Jehovah to Joshua. And all the kings on this side of the Jordan, all the kings of Canaan, heard the evil which Israel's seed had done to Jericho, to Ai, and they gathered themselves together to fight against Israel. Oh my! Lions and tigers and bears! We're in trouble! Only the inhabitants of Gibeon were greatly afraid of fighting against the Israelites, lest they should perish. So they acted cunningly. How did they act? It says, but the inhabitants, you can't see it. How can I get it over there? Try it like this. But the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho. And they worked craftily and went and pretended to be ambassadors. And they took old sacks on their donkeys, old wineskins torn and mended, old and patched sandals on their feet, old garments on themselves, and all the bread of their provisions was dry and moldy. They made it look like they'd been in a journey for a very long time. And they came to Joshua, to all Israel, and said unto them, we have come from a distant land. Now therefore make covenant with us. And the inhabitants of Gibeon overreached Israel's seed. And Israel's seed made a covenant with them. You guys don't make covenants. And they made peace with them, and the princes of the congregation swore unto them. These are the princes of the congregation, the head guys of the Ezra. But afterwards Israel's seed knew that they were neighbors to them and were dwelling amongst them. They were supposed to die. But Israel's seed slew them not, for they had sworn to them by Yehovah. Isn't that interesting? When they swear, how does Israel swear? Israel swears in the name of Yehovah. That's how we know it's going to be done. We can't take his name in vain. And they became hewers of wood and drawers of water. And Joshua said to them, why did you deceive me to do this thing to us? Well, duh. And they answered him, saying, because it was told to thy servants all that you had done to the kings of the Amorites. And we were greatly afraid of our lives, and we did this thing. And Joshua appointed them on that day to hew wood and to draw water and be divided. And he divided them for slaves. Okay, we're talking about men. We're talking about aved, if we're talking about slaves, to all the tribes of Israel. I'm guessing where the men went, their ladies would have gone also, would have been their slaves also. Now, look at this. It says, and Adonai, Adonai Zedek, the righteous master. Remember, Adonai says, my master. Adonai Zedek. Zedek, I would assume, would mean righteous. The righteous king of Jerusalem. Okay, this is not a righteous king that I can tell. Adonai Zedek, I'm sure is righteous, heard all that Israel's seed had done to Jericho, to Ai. And he sent to Haman, king of Hebron, and to Param, king of Jarmuth, to Japhia, king of Lachish, and to Davir, king of Eglon, saying, come up to me and help me, that we may smite Israel's seed and the inhabitants of Gibeon, who have made peace with Israel's seed. And they gathered themselves together, and the 5 kings of the Amorites went up with all their camps, a mighty people, numerous as the sand of the seashore. And all these kings came and encamped before Gibeon. And they began to fight with the inhabitants of Gibeon. And all the men of Gibeon sent to Joshua, saying, come up quickly to us, help us. For all the kings of the Amorites have gathered together to fight against us. Now we're defending our enemies who have become our servants because we swore by the name of Yehovah. And Joshua and all the fighting people went up from Gilgal. And Joshua came suddenly to them and smote these 5 kings with a great slaughter. Well, they're using the word slaughter here. With a great killing. Killing is what it would be. I'm sure it's not zavik, because we're not going to eat them. It's shakat, a great shakat. They make it slaughter. I hate that when they do that. Lacks understanding. And Jehovah confounded them before Israel's seed, whom smote them with a terrible shakat in Gibeon, and pursued them along the way that goes to Beth Horon unto Makkedah. But these 5 kings had fled and hidden themselves in a cave at Makkedah. And they fled from Israel's seed. These are the people that we're talking about right now. And whilst they were fleeing, Yahweh sent upon them hailstones from heaven. This is Yehovah sending them hailstones from heaven. And more of them died by the hailstones than by the shakat of Israel's seed, the killing of Israel's seed. And Israel's seed pursued them, and they still smote them in the road, going on and smiting them. And when they were smiting, the day was declining toward evening. And Joshua said in the sight of all the people, Which people is he talking about? The Ezra men, that's right. Listen what he says, though. This is interesting. Did Jehovah tell him to say this? Sun, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon, until the nation shall have revenge itself upon its enemies. It says, and Jehovah hearkened to the voice of Joshua. Jehovah hearkened to the voice of Joshua. Oh my. And the sun stood still in the midst of the heavens. And it stood still 36 moments. And the moon also stood still and hastened not to go down a whole day. 23 and a half hours is what I understand this to be. This says a whole day. This says 6 and 30 moments, whatever 6 and 30 moments is. Here it says in, what do I got here? And it happened. Oh, I'm going to have to open it for us to read it because it's. And it happened as they fled before Israel and were in the descent of Beth Horon that Jehovah cast down large hailstones from heaven on them as far as Azekah, and they died. There were more who died. See, now they haven't died. It's not a great slaughter from the hailstones than from Israel's seed, killing them with the sword. Killed them with the sword. Now, see, again, they used killed rather than it was because it's shakat. The word is shakat. It's not a slaughter. Then Joshua spoke to Jehovah in the day. Joshua spoke to Jehovah in the day when Jehovah delivered up the Amorites before Israel's seed. And he said in the sight of Israel's son, stand still over Gibeon, and moon in the valley of Ajalon. So the sun stood still, and the moon stopped, till the people had revenge upon their enemies. This is this not written in the book of Yasher? Isn't that neat? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven, and did not hasten to go down for a whole day. There it is, for a whole day. And there has been no day like that before it or after it, that Jehovah heeded the voice of a man, for Jehovah fought for Israel. Jehovah heeded the voice of a man. There was supposed to be a time where he heeded the voice of a man, because Moses was supposed to speak to the rock, and he didn't. Shadow pictures. It's all about setting up these shadow pictures. So here's Joshua speaking to the sun and the moon. I remember, I hate to even talk about Yeshua. Yeshua said there are some coming that'll be greater than him. Do greater things than he did. This is what we can expect in the last days. Those men who have the rod of their mouth and with their lips destroy the wicked. This is what it's all about, you guys. It's the shadow picture. And Jehovah hearkened to the voice of Joshua, and the sun stood still in the midst of the heavens, and it stood still 36 moments. And the moon also stood still and hastened not to go down a whole day. And there was no day like that before it or after it, that Jehovah hearkened to the voice of a man, for Jehovah fought for Israel. Here's 89. Then spoke Joshua the song on the day that Jehovah had given the Amorites into the hand of Joshua and Israel's seed. And he said in the sight of Israel, this is the song, thou hast done mighty things, Jehovah. It always says, oh, Jehovah, but there's no oh. In Hebrew, there's no oh. Carrie and I have looked this up. It's always added. Rarely is there an oh there. Oh, Jehovah has performed great deeds. Who is like thee? Who is like unto thee? My lips shall sing to thy name, my goodness, and my fortress, my high tower. I will sing a new song unto thee. With thanksgiving will I sing to thee. Thou art the strength of my salvation. The kings of the earth shall praise thee. The princes of the world shall sing to thee. The Israel's seed shall rejoice in thy salvation. They shall sing and praise thy power. To thee, O Yahovah, did we confide. We said, thou art our Elohim, for thou wast our shelter and the strong tower against our enemies. To thee we cried and were not ashamed. In thee we trusted and were delivered. When we cried out unto thee, thou didst hear our voice. Thou didst deliver our soul from the sword. Thou didst show unto us thy grace. Thou didst give unto us thy salvation. Thou didst rejoice our hearts with thy strength. Thou didst go forth for our salvation. With thine arm thou didst redeem thy people. Thou didst answer us before the heavens of thy holiness, and thou didst save us from 10,000s of people. This is that word that we talked about last week, milieu. Lots of people. It gets translated as 10,000s. The sun and the moon stood still in heaven, and thou didst stand in thy wrath against our oppressors, and didst command thy judgments over them. All the princes of the earth stood up, and the kings of the nations have gathered themselves together. They were not moved at thy presence. They desired thy battles, silly them. Thou didst rise against them in thine anger, and didst bring them down, and didst bring down thy wrath upon them. Thou didst destroy them in thy anger and cut them off in thy heart. You know, this is the same song that we're going to sing when we come into the millennial kingdom after Yahovah has delivered the whole world into our hands. This is the song that the Ezra are going to sing in each one of their locations. Thou didst put out thy fury upon them. Thy wrathful anger took hold of them. Thou didst turn their iniquity upon them. Hear that? He's turning their iniquity upon them. They wouldn't learn righteousness. They wouldn't repent and turn to Yahovah. Now their iniquity is going to be turned upon them. Just cut them off in their wickedness. They did spread a trap. Hear that? They spread a trap. They fell therein. In the net they hid, their foot was caught. Reminds me of, remember when the 7 cities of the Amorites back in Jacob's time, his son went to war with them. And they would shoot an arrow, and the arrow came back. These excellent shooters shoot with left, right hand from the top of a horse and hit their target every time. Every time they shot, it came around and hit one of their own guys. Whoa! What does it say? They spread a trap. They fell therein. In the net they hid. Their feet was caught. Oh. Thine hand was ready for all thy enemies who said, through their sword they possess the land. That's what all our enemies say right now. Strong America. We got the strongest country in the world. And of course, the Muslims are saying the same thing. Their hand. No. Through their sword they possessed the land. Through their arm they dwelt in the cities. Thou didst fill their faces with shame. That's what they're going to get. The people who are saying this. Thou didst bring their horn down to the ground. Thou didst testify them in thy wrath, and didst destroy them in thy anger. The earth trembled and shook at the sound of thy storm over them. Wow, this sounds, I don't know if you've ever read the Song of David. I read it at the end of my 144,000 in the scriptures. This sounds a lot like that song. The earth trembled. Look at that. The earth is trembling. This is what we're going to see in the last days. He's going to shake the earth, turn it into a wilderness. The earth trembled and shook at the sound of thy storm over them. Thou didst not withhold their souls from death, and didst bring down their lives to the grave. What do I have here? This is going to happen again right after we do a real Passover. It will. Thou didst pursue them in thy storm. Thou didst consume them in thy whirlwind. Thou didst turn their rain to hail. They fell in deep pits so that they could not rise. They're going to come against us like a flood, but the earth is going to open up with the power of Jehovah and swallow those guys up. Their carcasses were like rubbish cast out in the middle of the streets. They were consumed and destroyed in thy anger. Thou didst save thy people with thy might. Ooh, I want to see the strong arm working for me. Therefore our hearts rejoice in thee. Our souls exult in thy salvation. Who's the R that we're talking about? The or, our souls. We're talking about men. Exalted in thy salvation. Our tongue shall relate thy might. We will sing and praise thy wondrous works. Yeah, we're going to do it for 1,000 years. For thou didst save us from our enemies. Thou didst deliver us from those who rose up against us. Thou didst destroy them from before us and depress them beneath our feet. Thus shall our enemies perish, Jehovah, and the wicked shall be like chaff driven by the wind. And thy beloved, who's the beloved? The Ezra men shall be like trees planted by the waters. So Joshua, and that was the end of the song. So Joshua and all Israel with him returned to the camp of Gilgal after having smitten all the kings, so that not a remnant was left of them. And the 5 kings fled along on foot from battle and hid themselves in a cave. There's the cave we were talking about. And Joshua sought for them in the field of battle and did not find them. And it was afterwards told to Joshua, saying, the kings are found, and behold, they are hidden in a cave. And Joshua said, appoint men to be in the mouth of the cave, to be at the mouth of the cave, to guard them, lest they take themselves away. And Israel's seed did so. And Joshua called all Israel and said to the officers of battle, remember, we have leaders of thousands and hundreds, or thousands and 500s and hundreds and 50s and 10s, something like that. I forget if it's 500. So shall Yehovah do. No, here's these guys that are coming. Joshua called all Israel and said to the officers of battle, place your feet on the necks of these kings. And Joshua said, so shall Yehovah do to all your enemies. Here's another note I have. This is from Joshua 10:22. Get it to come up. There it is. And Joshua said, open the mouth of the cave. Bring out those 5 kings to me from the cave. And they did so and brought those 5 kings to him from the cave. And the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, the king of Eglon. So it was when they brought out these kings to Joshua that Joshua called to all the men of Israel and said to the captains of the men of war who went with him, come near, put your feet on the necks of these kings. And they drew near and put their feet on their necks. And Joshua said to them, do not be troubled nor be dismayed. Be strong and of good courage, for thus Jehovah will do to all your enemies whom you will fight. This is an example for us to build the faith to know that Jehovah fights for us. You know what? We didn't lose many men when we fought after Ai. We lost some guys, 23 guys. Then we lost a few more. But we didn't lose many men after that because we had Jehovah fighting for us. It says, and Joshua commanded afterwards that they should slay the kings and cast them into the cave and put great stones at the mouth of the cave. And Joshua went afterwards with all the people that were with him on the day to Makkedah, and he smote it with the edge of the sword. So this must be a city called Makkedah. Remember, we were just talking about the cave at Makkedah. This is the city, apparently, that he's smiting now. And he just utterly destroyed the souls and all belonging to that city. And he did to the king and to the people thereof as he had done to Jericho. And he passed from there to Libnah, and he fought against it. And Jehovah delivered it into the hand, and Joshua smote it with the edge of the sword and the souls thereof. And he did to it, to the king thereof, as he did to Jericho. It's interesting that they're saying we did it as we did to Jericho, as we did to Jericho. It reminds me of the times in Kings, Chronicles, when they introduced a new king and they said this one did what was right in the sight of Jehovah and followed the ways of his father David. Okay, this is kind of going back to the good things so that we know how this is done. Well, these towns, Makkedah, Libnah, Lachish, are all in the north. So the battle apparently went on in the north first. It says, then from there he passed to Lachish to fight against it. And Horam, the king of Gaza, went up to assist the men of Lachish. Now we're in the south. So these are now southern cities. Because Gaza, that's down in the Philistines. Lachish is down in the Philistines. Went up against the men of Lachish, and Joshua smote him and his people there, and his people until there was none left of them. And Joshua took Lachish and the people thereof, and he did to it as he had done to Libnah. And Joshua passed from there to Eglon, and he smote it and the people thereof with the edge of the sword. And from there he went and passed to Hebron and fought against it. And it took it and utterly destroyed it. And he returned from there with all Israel to Debir and fought against it and smote it with the edge of the sword. And he destroyed every soul in it. He left none remaining, and he did to it and the king thereof as he had done to Jericho. And Joshua smote the kings of the Amorites from Kadesh Barnea to Azah. Kadesh Barnea, way south, to Azah, way north, and took their country at once. For Jehovah fought for Israel. And Joshua with all Israel came to the camp of Gilgal. How am I doing on time? Came to the camp of Gilgal. And Joshua with all Israel came to the camp, to Gilgal. When all that time Jabin, king of Khazar, heard all that Joshua had done to the kings of the Amorites. Jabin sent to Jobat, king of Midian. So now we're getting Midian involved. And to Laban, king of Shimron, to Japhcal, king of Akshaph, and to all the kings of the Amorites, saying, "Come quickly to help us, to us, help us, that we might smite Israel's seed before they come upon us, and do unto us as they have done to the other kings of the Amorites." And these kings hearkened to the voice of Jabin, king of Khazar. And they went forth with all their camps, 17 kings. And their people were as numerous as the sands of the seashore, together with horses and chariots, innumerable. And they came and pitched together at the waters of Merom, 17 kings. And they were met together to fight against Israel. And Jehovah said to Joshua, "Fear them not, for tomorrow about this time I will deliver up all the slain before you. Thou shalt hew their horses and burn their chariots with fire." I had to look that up. What the hew was talking about. Here's Joshua. Here it is right here. But Jehovah said to Joshua, "Do not be afraid because of them, for tomorrow about this time I will deliver up all the slain before Israel. You shall hamstring their horses and burn their chariots with fire." That's what we're talking about. Hamstringing, hew their horses, burn their chariots with fire. These are the things that the world depends on. Remember, he told Israel, don't trust in horses and chariots. We don't have to worry about that. We don't need missiles. We don't need large weapons of wars. We don't need tanks, air cavalry. It's all going down. That's the strength that they have. That's how they wage their campaigns. We don't need it. 3 minutes left. And Joshua with all the men of war came suddenly upon them and smote them, and they fell into their hands, for Jehovah had delivered them into the hands of Israel's seed. I put this campaign is all in the north, and the last was all in the south. All right. Well, I'm going to stop right here. We'll pick it up next week. This is page 497. There's only 506 pages in the book of Yasher. All the rest is index. So we just have 9 pages to go. We're going to finish this next week, and then we're going to turn to Joshua. I want to read about the first 5 chapters of Joshua, only because they're related to Passover and the start of the Great Tribulation in Canaan, on the Canaanites. We're going to come and take the land in the last days, the whole world, the same way we took the land in the land of Canaan. Remember, everybody's got to die. Man, woman, children, everybody's going to be killed. There will be no survivors. You either join us or perish. All right, well, let's stop here then. We are going to go to Passover. Today's the night. I know Chris is keeping Passover. Some of you guys are. We will report again next week on what we did. Well, very good. Listen, have a great day. Thank you for joining me. Yehovah bless you. He's been so good to us. We are done with Torah. We're so close to finishing Yasher. And soon we get to start again in Genesis 1. Oh, I'm so excited to hear what we are going to see the next time through. Our eyes are opening slowly but surely. And as again, remember, it's about understanding. As we build our knowledge, as we build our understandings, we are able to see new things that we haven't seen before. Ooh, it's pretty fun. Okay, well, see you guys later. Thanks for joining me. If you're keeping Passover, have a wonderful day. Love you tons. Bye now.